Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have a great guest on now. Earlier in the year, I was a guest on his show, and we talked about some great things, and I really enjoyed the experience of learning more about his podcast, learning more about what he's doing in the digital marketing space. So I definitely wanted to bring him on because I think these are two very critical areas for entrepreneurs and business owners that are trying to build a brand and build a profitable business. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you so much for having me, Terrell. This is going to be a lot of fun today.
Absolutely. Now, before we jump into talking about, your digital marketing company and your podcast, tell us a little bit, what was your background before getting involved with those things?
Sure. So I've always had like a technical background. I was always like the technical guy on sales teams. I would be like the technical sales engineer or the pre-sales engineer in different companies. And that gave me a lot of visibility both into the technical side, programming side, things like that. So that was something that always interested me. But also, the sales was also interesting as well. I just wasn't part of the commissionable sales team. I wasn't responsible for actual sales, but I was always the person that was there to put out, ensure that our technical solution could fit into other companies, right? And what happened was I just found myself bouncing from job to job, right? I kept on getting laid off, or I would quit and move on to something else. And, it's like, here's a fun fact. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, right, no company that I have worked for ever still exists in its current form, right? They're all gone, right? And it just seemed like, I just felt like I was like some kind of corporate killer, right? Where I was just like, where I would be in these businesses that would eventually fail, some startups, some, between other mergers and things like that. And it just got to be like, geez, this sucks. Right. And then I started teaching myself, web design and a little bit of the, we didn't call it digital marketing back then, but that was 12 years ago. 12 years ago next month.
Wow.
I got fired for the last time. And that makes me certified unemployable at this point. And it's really been a great ride because what happened was I started out just, doing websites and I did it because, I wanted to be a real estate agent, right? Or, and a mortgage broker. So here in Florida, the big joke is 1 out of every 8 citizens in the state of Florida has a real estate license, right? So it's like, join the club, right? And what happened was when I realized I had zero aptitude for selling houses or selling mortgages, but I did have half an aptitude for creating websites and marketing them. That's when I was like, okay, yeah, I think it's time to switch, switch focus. And that's really how I got into it. And I really built my business up on, writing the trends, staying current, being able to, provide good service to my clients, all that great stuff, everything that makes a great business. And, so far still doing it. And, it's been truly a blessing.
Awesome. I mean, it's a very interesting industry because, as I often think that, from a finance perspective, looking at marketing, it's like, the tools and the methods and just the delivery. It seems like it's constantly changing. I guess from a person who's actually working in the industry, does it feel like that to you, or does it feel like, hey, it's the same thing, just a different delivery method?
It's a little bit of both. I would say 70%, 30%, 70% leaning on it's all the same thing, right? So search engine, let's just take search engine optimization, right? Everyone's talking about, the Google Panda update and the Google Penguin update, where Google would update their algorithm and then all these people lost their rankings, their keyword rankings for their websites. The search engine optimizers who were doing good work, creating content and doing above board white hat SEO for clients, things that Google approved of, they stayed. They never had a problem, right? It's the ones that try to take the quick approach or the backhanded approach or try to put your keywords and and content on all these different sites, even if they were in different languages. Yeah, that hurt them. So every time Google made an update, it was like, yeah, you lost rankings. So that's what happens. And what happened is, let's just take like Facebook, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, right? They're all pretty they pretty much do the same thing, right? But they have different audiences, they have different, cadences of how often you got to post and all that. And then along comes, Snapchat, right? And Snapchat's like, everyone's going crazy for it and, posting pictures. Well, and then Instagram was like, hey, I want to get in on this game, right? And then all of a sudden, Instagram is now doing Instagram stories the same way that Snapchat did their stories. It's all the same
Gotcha.
thing, right? And the next evolution of that is TikTok. I mean, how different is TikTok than Snapchat? Not a lot. It's just the tools are a little bit different. It's, but it's still people jumping around, pulling pranks, recording, we're just recording all kinds of stuff. And okay, well, that's TikTok for you. So yeah, so I would say 70% is a, things are very similar. You do have to learn the cadence and the audience of each new platform that comes up. But sometimes, like those things don't really come up so much. So like a lot of my clients, they're more brick and mortar. They're more, where they just want to get the word out, put out promotions and things like that. Maybe they're not so visual. So if they're not so visual, I don't even need to pay attention to TikTok for them, you know, and I could just focus on, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, like those big three, and make it happen for them.
Mhm. Awesome. Because I think that's something a lot of businesses probably struggle with is, they hear, there's a ton of digital marketers that pop up in my feed or people giving tips, and it's just trying to be able to sort out like, okay, what's a good framework to use to approach it? So I think what you're doing is great. So, you know,
Thank you.
tell us a little bit about what was that journey like? I mean, once you kind of narrowed in that, hey, this is what I want to focus on, the digital marketing space. What was it like building a business around, that focus?
When I first started out, keep in mind, I was still working my corporate job when I first started out doing this, when I first caught the bug, right? So I was, my career, my 9 to 5, I never had a job that really challenged me, right? I was always pigeonholed into this, very rigid job description, technical sales engineer, technical support guy, right? It's always has very rigid, definitions of what to do. And what would happen is I would get my work done by like 11:30 in the morning, right? And you couldn't go home then, right? You couldn't just say, okay, thank you very much, I'll see you guys later. And I didn't smoke, so I couldn't go hang out with the smokers outside who were taking breaks, every 15 minutes, right? And I had to find some way to keep myself busy without just reading a book or a magazine, right? And I really just started googling around and trying to, I taught myself how to use WordPress. I taught myself a little bit of programming. I taught myself a little bit about editing, like sound editing, video editing, things like that. And I did this all from my corporate desk, right? And whenever someone would walk past me, they'd be like, "Wow, that Jeff, look at him. He's always, like this on the, fingers on the keyboard." And they didn't realize I was building my own thing. And what happened was, I'd start getting awards, most productive employee of the month, employee of the year, things like that. And I'm like, whoa, like if you guys even knew the half of it, right? And at first, when making your first dollar online is always exhilarating, right? That first dollar that you didn't have to like hustle for, that it's just, you wake up in the morning and you got an email, oh, you got $500. And it's like, whoa, it's a really big, it's a really good feeling. So when I started out doing that, it was like, it was just something to augment my, my normal salary, right? I was like, oh, I could take my wife out to a nice dinner now, things like that. And it really just became, it morphed into something more. It's like, wait a second, I'm controlling this. I don't have anyone talking down to me, telling me do this, do that, right? I'm doing this on my own. And that's what got good to me, right? That's where I was like, okay, wait a second. Wait, if I can do this for one, all I need are 5 clients like this, and like I can quit this job, right? All I need are 10 clients like this, and I'll just be set. I'll be on top of the world. And that's really how it started, just trying to, just trying to think of, okay, how am I going to do this? The biggest revelation for me, when starting that journey, was that it is so much easier to sell someone on a recurring subscription, some kind of retainer that they're paying you every month, that you don't have to ask for the money every month,
Yeah.
right? Once you do that, then it just becomes so much easier, because, like doing a website, what is that? That's, 50% down, 50% upon completion. Yeah, it's nice, right? But then you have to go and sell them on other things, right? But when you're selling a marketing retainer, that just happens every month, right? I just hit their card at the first of the month and it's all good. And some of these clients have been with me for years, and it's been, in that respect, it's been great. So I will almost always favor the recurring model over the project model. And as a matter of fact, I don't really take on projects so much anymore. Like if there isn't a recurring component to it, not interested. Just
Gotcha.
move on, because it's just not, it just sucks up too much time.
Mhm. And I think, there's a couple things that you said that I thought was very interesting. I think on that part about, when after you make your first deal and you start doing the math of like, man, five more of these, and it's like, this is where I can be. And, as a finance person, that's what I really enjoy with working with other business owners. It's just, drawing out that math, because I think that's where the light bulb starts to come on to people, like that they start seeing like, well, this can be something if I just do this five more times. I mean, I think that's exciting. And one of the things I'm curious about is, as you started to, really narrow in on, like I said, the recurring model, I guess, did you have any emotional pull between project, the recurring, or I guess because when I talk to some people, they get to that point where they see that, yes, like you said, it's easier, it's more fluid for them to do the recurring, but it's like a part of them, there's this emotional pull where they don't want to completely walk away from the project. Or was that kind of like a clean decision for you?
No, it's never clean. It's always dirty. It's always vexing. It's always going to bug you, right? I mean, it's one of those, and part of it is shiny object syndrome, right? Someone dangles, like a big project your way, and oh, like I'm a little short this month on money. This project could really save the month. That's the thing, right? I mean, it's, yeah, you really need to make, your decision based on how you'll be able to service this client if you have to disengage from the recurring stuff in order to handle this one-time project, right? So I would say, yeah, it's a decision. It's not an easy decision to make. Um, I still do price some projects where like like the website is the project, but then right afterwards, the marketing part kicks off, right? So there is, part of that component. I think more or less what happens is that you really need to pick and choose, the types of projects that you do that way. You need to make sure that you're able to deliver. You need to make sure that your client is, for example, is able to give you the right information, that you need in order to complete your job. I have one job right now that I started back in March, and we're still not done with it.
Wow.
Why? It's like every time I ask these, I ask them, I'm like, okay, like, I need the content for this particular page. Okay, yeah, Jeff, we'll send it to you. 3 weeks go by, and it's like, well, dude, it's time to, it's time to move up. And what are you going to do? You're going to threaten them? You're going to tell them, hey, I'm going to take the whole site down if you don't pay me up front, so it's, it's not always so easy to do that because you do have some external forces working against you, right? But I think that striving for the recurring model is, at least in my opinion, the smarter way to go. And if you do need to take on projects in order to backfill, things like that, yeah, okay, maybe. But again, I mean, you do you, because you need to figure out if you're able to truly service that client and continue servicing all the other clients that are paying you recurring as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to talk about the podcast. So how did
Sure.
you get into that route? Because like I said, I really enjoyed the podcast. I mean, I think, yeah, yep, definitely great message, great quality there. So how did that journey unfold?
This is my second podcast. The first one I started with a partner about 7, 8 years ago. It was called the Blog This Podcast. We got to 5 episodes and then stopped. She ended up having, some family stuff that she needed to take care of. I didn't have, my divorce started, and it was like, that sucks. Right.
Gotcha.
And then when I started to pick this thing up on my own, I really wanted to find something that had legs, that
Mhm.
wouldn't be super niche, that, only 3 or 4 people would be interested in. At the same time, I knew I wanted it to fit my schedule and my way of thinking. Right. So I personally don't enjoy, like hour and a half long interviews, so I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. We're going to talk about one thing, the one big tip. Right. And and that's my filter. I make people articulate even before we get on the phone to tell me what is their one big tip. And it's got to be something that's actionable, measurable, tangible, something that you can use, right? So the vibe I'm going for is I learned something today, right? It's not a mindset, not a dream, it's not an aspiration. I try to stay away from the woo-woo people that are just like, oh, you just need to manifest yourself. Like, no, that's not a one big tip, right? Um, and what it came in, and what happened was the trajectory for this. So we're recording this in December. The podcast is exactly 1 year old at this point. Um, at first, I was like, how the hell am I going to get 4 people a month to talk to me? Right. And that was like my biggest thing. Like, how am I gonna make that happen? Right. Because I knew consistency is key, right? You got to really put that out there. And okay, I found 4 people, friends and family and things like that. And then I found a few more and then a few more. 4 turned to 10, 10 turned to 20, 20 turned to 40, 40 turned to 60. And I'm like, wait a second. There's only 52 weeks in a year. How am I gonna, I already recorded ahead, so far. And then I was like, okay, I got to change the cadence to twice where I'm releasing twice a week. And I did that, and then the people still kept on coming, right? And even now I'm recording about 9, 10 months ahead. And okay, wait a second, like where's this going, right? And the cool thing about it is that there is, and I guarantee you this, there is no better networking tool, right? You have the opportunity to interview your potential clients. You have the opportunity to talk about yourself and your business. And if you position yourself right, you have the opportunity to pitch, the guests on, like not on the recorded part of your show, but afterwards it's like, oh, hey, like, what do you do? How do you do that? Right. And you could talk about, I talk about financial matters, or I do website design, or I do things like that. And what happens is that it becomes this tool, and it just broadens your network, right?
Yeah.
And not only does it broaden your network, it also puts it establishes your authority, right? Like I have authority now, where people come to me and they're like, oh, hey, Jeff's a really great podcaster. And for the longest time, meaning up until like 2 months ago, I didn't even think of myself as a pro podcaster, right? I was just like, it almost felt hobbyish,
Yeah.
to me. And, there were a couple times I wanted to quit, and a couple times I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling it, but I plowed through. But then all of a sudden people start coming to me for advice. Jeff, you have this great podcast. You released 80 episodes already. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you don't know the half of it. I recorded 160, right? And literally the half of it, right? And what happened was, it was like, once you start to accept it, it's like, well, okay, yeah, I am farther ahead than other people, right? So that does put me in a position of authority. That does put me in a position of being able to pay it forward in other ways, being able to help other people, achieve their dreams, right? And I think one of the biggest revelations for me for having a podcast is the vanity metrics, how many downloads, how many listens, how many, all that, none of that matters, right? I found like almost nobody asks me, like how many downloads, how big is your audience? It's like, it feels kind of fake. It feels kind of disingenuous just talking about it. But I don't podcast. I don't record to hear myself talk or to hear myself think. I do it because it is an excellent networking tool where I get to nerd out on business advice with all kinds of different people, right? And that for me is it. And then when I get feedback saying, "Hey, I listened to this particular episode. I really like the message. Thank you so much for putting it out." Like, that's it. I'm done. Game over. This is exactly why I did it.
Awesome, awesome. I so agree with that. I mean, there's a lot to that. I think just being able to focus in on that value of being able to network. I think that's something that a lot of people that are doing podcasts, I look at, focus just on the vanity metrics. I think they miss that part of, it's a great tool for that. I mean, because like I said, you get to have a true conversation and develop a true rapport and relationship with the guest. So I so agree with that. Now, when it comes down to the podcast, where can people find it?
Sure. So you can find it on the Apple Podcasts, on Google, on Stitcher, Spotify, like all those great venues. You can find it there. It's called the One Big Tip Podcast. Also on my website, jeffmendelson.com, there's a link up on the top. You'll see all the show notes and, the blog posts that explain a little bit more, contact information for all the guests. Like it's all there for you to see.
Awesome, awesome. And then for your digital marketing services, how can people get in touch with you, or how can they follow you on social media to find out more about that?
Sure. So probably the best is LinkedIn, right? So if you just look up Jeff Mendelson, see my picture there and see all the stuff that I'm putting out. And, just message me there. I get back to everybody. I love paying it forward. Like I said, I love nerding out about this stuff. And on the Jeff Mendelson site is a lot more information about the types of services that we do. We do podcast production services, so that we do the editing. All you got to do is record. We also do the local search, paid ads, content marketing, social media management, all that great stuff that you would expect from a good agency.
Awesome, awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I guess you say two questions that I would like to ask, because I really like, all the guests to get value out of the guest's perspective, and all the guests have different specialties. And so, the first one would be on the podcasting. So, what's one tip that you would give to others trying to develop or go into podcasting?
This is going to sound so cliche. You're probably going to shoot me, right? But it's, just do it, right? And it's, just get started. And I'll tell you why. First of all, everyone starts with 0 followers, right? And this is not, no one's going to come out of the gate being a Joe Rogan or Adam Carolla or Howard Stern, people that have, massive audiences. That is not what this is about. I mean, if that's what you're about, you're going after the, the monetization of the actual show. And if you have the talent to make that happen, God bless you. I wish you the best amount of success. The fact of the matter is, for people to establish authority and to network with their core customers, a podcast is a fun, easy way to meet new people, to meet your prospects, and to get a conversation with the decision makers without going through all the gatekeepers, right? And what happens is that you're doing it in a non-threatening way. And podcasting is not a skill that needs to be learned, right? You're already good in sales. You're already good in getting customers. Like you've already done this. You already have a business going on, right? So the fact that you are now recording the conversation is actually just that's just a technical switch that you just turned up, and and that's it. So as cliche as it sounds, just get started, right? Try to have some kind of unifying theme around it, obviously, right? But the technical parts of actually getting it out there are the hurdles are not big, and anyone can do it. The industry itself, the medium of podcasting, is still in its virgin state, right? It's still, it hasn't been fully exploited yet, even though there's like 1 million plus podcasts on iTunes, for example. Not all of them are active, right? There's only a small percentage of ones that are active. And if you can stay active on it, then you're already farther ahead than 70% of the people that have come onto podcasting before you.
Awesome, awesome. And now the second question is, when you think about the digital marketing, what's one tip that you would give business owners when it comes to digital marketing?
That's a really big question, because the whole idea of digital marketing is like it's like a whole industry, right? I would say this for brick and mortar businesses. I'll tell you a quick story. We were driving down the street, and my girls said that they were hungry and they wanted sushi. I'm like, great, use your phone and find me the closest sushi restaurant, right? And it just so happened I pulled up to a stoplight, and they told me, oh, Papa, there's a sushi restaurant, I don't know, 3 blocks ahead. I'm like, okay, great. But I happened to look right, and there was a sushi restaurant right there. I'm like, well, wait a second. How come, why not this one? They're like, oh, it didn't show on the map. There you go, right? If you're not online, right? If you're not online, you are practically invisible, right? And I wish more people would understand that detail, right? Because, they go and invest, 50, $100,000 building out a store, building out a restaurant, whatever. And if you don't deal with with the digital part, this is how people find you, all the way from dog groomers to restaurants to professionals to consultants to life coaches to everybody. You gotta be out there. Now, to answer your question, the one tip about digital marketing is putting out content and being authentic with it, not just putting out sales material saying, buy from me, no, buy from us, things like that, but actually putting out something of value. And, that's when people will actually come back to you. And I think that's really the biggest takeaway from it is that it's not just a question of, let's create a 5-page website that's like a brochure.
Awesome.
So if that's the case, then great, but then no one will see it, right? And that's really a shame, because then you're doing your own business a disservice.
I think that's phenomenal. So Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Definitely been a pleasure having you on the show. So thanks for coming on.
It was a great honor. Thank you so much, Terrell. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like our content, be sure to follow us on social media. And if you want to see more of our exclusive content, you can subscribe and become a member on patreon.com/Business Talk Library. Hey, the Business Talk Library is the place where business makes sense.